Pag di nagtigil ng katuturuyan, baka putulin ko ang titilyan.
Tumahimik po na kayo.
In our fight against communism.
Buhay ang NPA! Motherfucker! Alisin mo yan! Adik ka ba?
My God, I hate drugs.
Okay, welcome to Daang Dokyu. Mga estudyante, mga guro, mga documentary fans from all over the Philippines. Ito po ang the home at tahanan po ng Philippine documentaries. I'm very happy to be your host and moderator tonight. Ako po si Howie Severino, isa rin dokumentarista. At bago sa lahat, may babasahin lang akong napakagandang intro na sinulat ng isa sa mga dakilang organizer ng festival na to. Mga imahe ng katutubong ating pinagmulan, mga salaysay ng hagupit ng kalamidad sa kapaligiran, mga video ng pagbabago sa inang kalikasan, mga kwento ng tunggalian sa ngalan ng kaunlaran, mga larawan na nakalipas hanggang sa kasalukuyan, magkakawing na krisis ng bayan at kalikasan. Ano nga ba ang kasaysayan at patutunguhan? Ang lahat ng ito ay tila mga bahagi ng jigsaw puzzle na bumubuo sa isang kwento ng tao, bayan at kalikasan na maaari siyang magpasya sa ating kinabukasan. Ito ang mga tutukan sa unang linggo ng Daang Dokyu. Maaari po nating silang mapanood sa daangdokyu.com/watchnow.
And you will meet the rainbow's twin. Exploitation since the 1960s. All the villagers were forced to flee into the mountains.
Please raise your hand. Any of your family were killed when you were forced to live here.
Shot dead.
Dili sa ingon na nga, namatay siya, namatay po ang iyang nasugdan.
Pilipinas ang isa sa may pinakamaraming bilang ng mga ibon na nanganganib mawala ng tuluyan.
Hindi rin basta-basta makakasab din yun eh. Kuwang ko ito eh.
Daghang naghiskot pa sa mga iro nga di mahunong og uwang. Pila ka semana human ang bagyo. Makakita pa ka ang mga iro sa mga walang nahimutang nga kag?
Okay, welcome back to Daang Dokyu. Meron tayong session ngayon ang pinamagat ay reality check. Daang Dokyu reality check. Bago sa lahat, shout out muna bago ko makalimutan mga estudyante from University of San Carlos, Cebu. Kasama natin ngayon, pati mga tiga UST Journalism Guild, mga estudyante ng Ateneo de Manila Universities, Our co-presenters for tonight, JCI, Pulyon Foundation, Greenpeace Philippines, and PH Can. Dito po sa reality check ngayong gabi ay makakasama natin ng ilan sa mga batikang filmmaker at natatanging resource persons na eksperto sa kanya-kanyang larangan. Himayin natin ang magkakaugnay na tema at mensaheng laman ng mga dokumentaryong mapapanood sa Daang Dokyu. Pag-usapan natin ang iba't ibang papel na maaring gampanan ng mga dokumentarista sa mga kwentong ito. Okay, unang-una sa ating panel, Kidlat Tahimik, director, actor, screenwriter, producer, na kinikilalang ama ng Philippine independent film at pioneer ng Philippine New Wave, otherwise known as the legend. Higit sa lahat, siya ay isang national artist for film, and it just so happens na birthday niya ngayon. So happy birthday, Kidlat Tahimik. Tatay. Okay. And I guess this is oldest to youngest, no? Susunod si Dr. Giovanni Tapang, ang batikang dean ng UP College of Science. Ang kanyang research ay nakatuon sa instrumentation, optics, and computational physics. Ang kasalukuyang proyekto niya ay ang STAMP o Standards and Testing Automated Modular Platform under the DOST. And we know that he's also been very engaged in the public sphere as a scientist. Ang susunod ay si Neen Sapalo, kasalukuyang Pantao Human Rights Research Fellow at isang graduate student ng anthropology sa UP Diliman. Siya ay nagtuturo sa Kalayaan College at host ng Altermedia Network's Alab Newscast. Ang susunod and the fourth ay si Panks Solajes, tiga Tacloban pero kasalukuyang nasa Switzerland. Siya ay isang artist, environment advocate, director ng short films na Balud at Himorasak na ipinapalabas ngayon sa Daang Dokyu. Ang iba pa niyang likha ay napasama sa Chicago International Film Festival, Doc Lisboa sa Portugal, UP Vargas Museum at iba pa. Siya rin ay kasalukuyang multimedia storyteller for UNICEF Geneva. So feel free to join the discussion. Maaari niyong ibahagi ang inyong mga opinion, saloobin at katanungan sa Daang Dokyu sa comment section ng aming mga social media pages. So if flash natin ngayon yung mga handles, so you will know where to go to post your comments and questions. Okay, so umpisa na po natin ang ating talakayan. I want to start, of course, with our resident national artist, Kidlat Tahimik, ang ating birthday boy. Yung pelikula mo, Kidlat, no, sa ecology section ng Daang Dokyu ay Memories of Underdevelopment, no?
Overdevelopment.
Memories of Overdevelopment, 40 years in the making. Una kong napanood to, no? It was kind of the first version. And it's undergone an evolution, you know. So you've included here a lot of your observations about where the country has gone. Sa simula ng pelikula, you were a young man, but after about 10 minutes, matanda ka na, no? It's not a matter of makeup, no? So it's one of those films where you actually documented your own aging, no? So you're over 70 years old now. Today, you just celebrated your birthday. So you've observed the journey of this country for at least that long, no? So this journey of the country that you've been observing all this time and documenting in this film and other films, does it make you happy or sad? And why?
Well, maraming paglulungkutan dahil maraming hindi nangyayari that yung talagang gusto natin mangyari. But marami ring masaya kasi may mga apo ako who are now handling their own cameras. I think bilang isang mamamayan na mahawak ng camera ay marami akong gusto mangyari dito sa bayan, but I can only record, pwede ko lang isama sa aking mga kwento itong mga nangyayari. Siyempre, selected ng mga mata ko. And in the end, pagka nakikita napapanood ng mga audience, they will come to their own conclusions. So I think I don't want to be a clenched fist documentarist. I mean, we have a place for that. I can enjoy some very strong activist documentaries. Ako, I happen to come from the Bathala na School of Filmmaking. Bathala na kung anong mangyari, kung anong ma-pick up ng camera ko. And that becomes the story. So 40 years kong ginagawa yung Balikbayan #1 or Memories of Overdevelopment. And I can't say I directed it. Parang nangyari. The films became, kasi nangyayari sa bayan natin, we had all kinds. We had martial law, we had post-martial law, we had euphoric yellow period. We are now in the middle of well, I haven't made my final judgments. Pero technological-wise, nag-umpisa ako sa 16mm. And ngayon with digital and with the small iPhones, marami na akong kasama. Hindi na ako nag-iisa sa playful cameras. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Okay, just want to ask a follow-up before we go to the other guests, no? Kasi hina-highlight mo rito yung ating indigenous culture, no? And you've been going to a particular village all these years. And so in all of that time, ano yung mga gusto mong i-highlight na pagbabago, and ano naman yung mga hindi nagbago?
Well, okay. Alam mo, when I started the film, yung film Balikbayan #1 is about yung unang umikot sa mundo na he happened to be a slave ni Magellan, kasama niya sa circumnavigation. And I decided to cast him as an Ifugao. Okay? Simply because mas kilala ko yung kultura dito sa Cordilleras at mas madali sa costume department, mainly me, gumawa lang ng bahag. So it became a central convenient icon. Convenient that when you see somebody na bahag, it's easier to juxtapose him to the master and the slave, no? Pero parang cliche siguro when I started that 40 years ago. 20 years ago, na-involve ako sa Hapaw, Ifugao, and I got immersed in that culture, and I've been with them for the last 20 years. Mas naging bahagi ng sarili ko yung kanilang mga paniniwala at kanilang mga kaalaman. So I think pumasok na yung mga elements niyon sa film ko. But I think if I would do this film again now, I would include much more yung sigla at yung lakas ng kanilang kultura, which unfortunately our colonized country has given up. Sayang, sumabay tayo sa echo chamber ng mga dayuhan na these tribes are primitive, backward, pagan. Lahat yun, karamihan ng Pilipino naniniwala pa rin na yung mga katribu are primitive. Pero I think we have a lot to learn from them, at kung nakinig tayo sa mga katutubo, siguro itong ecological crisis natin hindi mangyayari. They have a very strong kapwa relationship with kapwa kahoy, kapwa gubat, kapwa ilog. Kaya their treatment of nature is something that we can learn from. Pero unfortunately, we follow the Americans who put a $sign on every pine tree, kaya nakakalbon na tayo dito sa Baguio. So yan ang paninibago na I think we can go back to.
Sige, actually maraming magagandang themes kang nabanggit. Babalikan natin yung mga ibang themes na yan, no? Yung colonialism, culture. Pero gusto kong tanungin naman si Dr. Tapang, no? Dean siya na ngayon ng College of Science sa UP. But at the same time, he's matagal na siyang involved, no, sa larangan ng science and society, no, and as a leader, especially of AGHAM, no, yung Advocates of Science and Technology for the People, no. I mean, I think most people in our audience tonight know the value of science, but of course, in this day and age, we cannot say the same thing about the entire society. So ngayon may pandemya tayo, nasa gitna tayo ng pandemya. I'm sure you've had a lot of time to reflect on this, Prof, no?
Yeah.
So do you think scientists have enough of a role now? Kasi alam ko you've been advocating na dapat mabigyan ng mas malaking halaga, mas mabigyan ng role ang siyensya and mga scientists, no, sa ating lipunan. Ikaw naman, how do you see your journey, all of these years of advocating and being a scientist and being an engaged scientist? How do you feel about
Dati kasi, I did it really just because I was a scientist doing measurements. But eventually, I probably just like the documentaries that you can't just take a picture or take a film of something without being involved in it. So yung aking journey as a scientist, hindi ko may iwasan na tanungin kung bakit ganito yung sitwasyon natin sa lipunan, bakit na measure mo naman yung global warming, bakit ang dami pa rin magde-deny. Top 5 ng ating disasters ay related sa tubig, sa ulan, o kulang ng ulan. Pero hindi pa rin tayo handa every year, year in, year out, nagkakaroon tayo ng problema sa mga bagyo. These things actually make you think. Hindi lang talaga usapin kasi ng alam mo kung ano ang science, talagang kailangan dalhin mo siya doon sa mga mamamayan na maiintindihan nila kung bakit ganyan yung nagiging sitwasyon nila, and also to lead the policymakers so that they would have a grounding on what they do. Unfortunately, gaya ng mga storya na nakita natin, hindi naman talaga ganun kadali na sabihin may global warming. Ito ang magiging epekto. Hindi naman din linear ang mundo. At iba't ibang mga drives ang nagtutulak sa iba't ibang segment ng ating lipunan dun sa pagtingin sa kalikasan. Gaya ng sinabi nga, diba? We are rich by giving and we are rich by losing. Dahil napakayaman ng ating bayan, talagang pag-iinteresan siya. Kung hindi handa yung mga mamamayan natin, kasama na yung mga katutubo at tayo, the science can only do so much. We really have to go beyond the science and reach out to society to make it more meaningful to everybody.
Okay, just a question about what's going on today, Prof, no? Kasi parang nagkataon, napaka-importante ngayon ang siyensya dahil ang lalaki ng problema natin when it comes to climate change. Ngayon may pandemya where parang lives are at stake, no? Pero nagkataon din na in global politics ngayon, may lumalabas ng mga leader sa mga iba't ibang bansa na parang binabaliwala ngayon ang siyensya. And just yesterday, the President of the United States na climate change denier at ginagawang lokohan lang yung coronavirus tsaka yung COVID. I mean, that sounds familiar, di ba? Na nagpositibo, no? So it's kind of a lesson for everyone, no? So anong tingin mo rin? Are you very dismayed as a scientist na parang there's a denial of what has been already established as scientific fact, no? And then just as a way of connecting it to documentary, kasi documentary is supposed to be non-fiction, ano? So kami as non-fiction filmmakers, as journalists, we also feel under siege in a way kasi parang the truth, facts are being attacked and they're being devalued, no? So do scientists also feel that way, that the truth and the facts according to science are also being devalued?
Yeah, totoo yan. Kahit naman anong galing ng ginawa mo na research, kung hindi maiintindihan at hindi makakarating dun sa ang consumers naman nito ay hindi lang yung fellow scientist na yan. Consumers dapat ang endpoint ng science mo ay mabago mo kung ano yung sitwasyon at kung paintindi mo yung lipunan. For example, maganda yung title actually natin ngayon, Reality Check. Nature will always give us a reality check. And that's the best measurement really of what we think if it's true or not. The problem is I wasn't really surprised that a lot of this information has come out at this time, because nakita na natin to with the rise of Facebook, with making it so easy to put out information and making it an algorithm decide what you will watch next or you will see in your feed. Talagang ang mangyayari ay giant echo chamber facilitated by the internet. But what is very important really is to hold on to what can be verified by the facts. Buti meron tayong mga documentaries that is being shown right now na hindi nawawalan ng timeliness. Actually, papanoorin mo yung ginawa no 1970s, 1980s, parang palitan mo lang yung mga titles, pareho pa rin ng story eh. Dalawang ibig sabihin nun, hindi natin nabago yung sitwasyon. And number two, totoo pa rin yung sinasabi nila. And I think that's the value for me as a scientist which also document nature of documentaries like this, that we should keep on doing things like this, because it won't lose its value until the issues there are resolved. Ang problema, malayo pa ang resolution nito. Ilang orbit day pa ang kailangan natin para lang abutin natin yung mga importanteng changes sa mas maganda para sa ating bayan.
All right, thanks. Gusto ko naman tanungin si Neen Sapalo, no? She's also a teacher but also an anthropologist and with a special interest in indigenous peoples, including the people of the Cordillera, no? Of course, alam natin si Kidlat Tahimik is from Baguio, and he's been immersed in a culture of the Cordillera. Pero anong tingin mo sa depiction ng eyepiece sa media in general, and how has it evolved? Kasi dito sa ating documentary festivals, Daang Dokyu, no, there are a number of films about indigenous peoples portrayed in different ways, including the earliest one in this festival, 1913, no, done by U.S. colonial authorities, showing Igorot people, indigenous peoples in the Cordillera, yung medyo na-exoticize nga sila, no? But that was 1913. So, share some thoughts about how you think they're being depicted, especially today.
Actually, ang kung napanood ay yung full-length feature documentary ni Robert Flaherty na Nanok of the North as an ethnographic film. And then recently ko lang napanood yung Native Life in the Philippines ni Dean Worcester. And then you see similarities dun sa mga ethnographic films like this where they portray indigenous peoples as noble savages, no? Both films po, ang portrayal sa indigenous peoples ay mga wild, mga uncultured na mga grupo. Tapos makikita mo rin dun sa process ng filmmaking nung panahon na yon, usong-uso talaga yung pagse-stage ng mga scenes, no? Kasi halimbawa si Dean Worcester, apparently, no, inutusan niya yung mga natives ng Ifugao na gawin tong mga ritual na to. And in fact, ang ginamit nila ay paper mache na head para dun sa head hunting scene. Makikita mo rin yun sa Nanok of the North, no? Inuutusan nung mismong filmmaker na gawin ito, gawin yan, yung mga ritual na to, na hindi naman talaga, hindi ethical, pero later on na lang natin siya nakita, no? O na-realize ng mga anthropologists. Tapos may idealized kasi ng uncivilized man in most ethnographic films dealing with non-Western peoples. And it was very important for colonial enterprises before. Kasi it justifies the need for assimilation, it justifies the need for the colonial powers to stay in those colonies.
So ano tingin mo ng what is the role of native cultures? Because some of them are still very much alive, no? So anong pwede nilang may ambag sa ating national development, national identity? Because they're called minority. Kumbaga nasa margin sila, and I guess the majority is the more westernized, Christianized. No? But I always remember what my father told me. My father is a native Bisaya, but sabi niya, why can't I call myself indigenous? I cannot trace my roots to another country, diba? So why am I not as an indigenous as the indigenous peoples who are recognized as indigenous, no? So by categorizing certain people as indigenous and everyone else as being kind of, I guess the rest of us are non-indigenous, parang doesn't that create kind of an almost an artificial barrier? Shouldn't the rest of us also feel that we're indigenous to the Philippines?
Tama po, no? May dalawang sense ang gamit natin ng indigenous. Actually, indigenous tayo sa Pilipinas. Ibig sabihin, dito tayo pinanganak, no? Dito tayo nakaugat. Pero yung indigenous peoples, the way we use it nowadays, it pertains to a group of people or a community na historically ay minoritized at hindi na-integrate doon sa global market, no? At nanatili ang kanilang traditional governance systems, kanilang traditional belief systems, no? At saka yung kultura. Tapos yung isa niyong tanong ay ano yung matutulong sa atin o matuturo sa atin ng indigenous peoples ngayon? Napakarami po, no? Halimbawa, sa usapin ng disaster, natin doon sa mga films sa Daang Dokyu ngayon, no, na available. Makikita mo yung folk beliefs na halimbawa sa film ni Pax, yung Balud, no? Folk beliefs ng mga matatanda sa kanilang lugar ay indigenous siya in the sense na may rootedness, nakaugat doon sa sariling konteksto. Itong mga notions of disaster, notions of environmental justice, no? At kung tama naman sinabi ni Sir Kidlat, no, kung nakikinig tayo sa kanila, maintindihan natin na there are different ways and many ways of viewing things, no, of conceptualizing things. For example, yung disaster, very technocratic kasi ang ating disaster paradigm or disaster model. Iniisip natin ang disaster ay isang problema na experts lang ang makakasolve. No, na engineers lang ang makakasolve, scientists lang ang makakasolve. Maaaring sa isang banda, matutulungan nila tayo. Pero if we heed, the advice and the knowledges of indigenous peoples, mas marami tayong tiyak na mas efficient yung way natin of addressing disasters and of lessening vulnerability.
Okay, salamat Neen, no? Importante yung perspective yan. Nabanggit mo nga yung mga pelikula ni Panks, no? I mean, who happens to be right now in Europe, pero nakilala siya bilang isang community filmmaker na taga Tacloban, Leyte, and he did a film that commemorates Typhoon Haiyan o Yolanda. No? So, Panks, no? Anong tingin mong mission ng isang community filmmaker? Anong mission mo bilang isang filmmaker na nakaugat sa isang komunidad?
Ang dami. Wait, check ko yung notes ko. First of all, personally, yung pagbalik ko sa community, which I spent the past 5 years with and patuloy na nakikipagpanayam ngayon at tumutulong. In connection sa sinabi ng ibang speakers, no, it's going back to the roots. Yung title nga ng pelikula ni Tay Kidlat is Balikbayan. Kailangan natin magbalik sa bayan, balikan yung roots natin para maintindihan kung ano yung lengguwahe na meron tayo. Lengguwahe patungkol sa pakikitungo natin, pakikipagkapwa sa kalikasan. Which also, makikita natin sa roster of films na available sa Daang Dokyu, sa ecology, na yung lengguwahe mismo, language itself, since yung napanood natin 1913 until now, yung language, whether it's the language of film or language in general, ay wini-weaponize din against us. For example, invasion, colonialism right now with neo-colonialism and capitalism is disguised as development, as kaunlaran. Pero para kanino? Diba? Yung resistance ng community is a basic human right. Pero yung lingwahe ngayon na ginagamit ng administrasyon at yung mga nakaraang administrasyon at mga colonizers ng Pilipinas, yung tingin nila sa resistance ay terrorism. Alam mo yun, yung tingin nila doon ay communism. Even sa bullet-laced dreams, yung mga kabataan na nag-aaral lamang, where they see education as their weapon to protect their own land, tinatag sila as communists as early as 13 years old. When it comes to language, words like traditional, indigenous, ngayon ginagamit siya as an othering. Indigenous people are looked at as others, as outdated, as uneducated, uncultured. So I guess isa sa roles ng storytellers kagaya natin is to humanize itong mga injustices, to humanize, for example, yung sabi ni Sir Vanny, to humanize yung issues ng environment. Kasi pwedeng intimidating, as much as we need science, we super duper need science, especially in our government. Parang ni isang scientist, wala tayong politiko na scientist, di ba? And even the budget for science and research is undermined. Budget for academe is undermined. This is how we can work together collectively. Yung experts like Sir Vanny, like Neen, yung language nila na scientific ang lens could be humanized by filmmakers and storytellers alike. Para ma-connect natin yung communities natin, all of us, indigenous people, connected sa reality, sa science, without drawing a black and white between the two. Diba? Kasi ito nga yung nilalaban ever since na Enlightenment, diba? Yung pagsasabay at yung pagsasabay ng siyensya at ng arts. Kasi ito yung gabay natin as a species, as a humanity. Hindi lang to about the Philippines anymore. Together with our cultures, traditions, and science. Sana meron pa tayong makitang pag-asa sa future, bilang yung pinipaint na picture ng program ay medyo madilim. Pero sana ito yung maging trigger para lahat tayo ay gumawa ng paraan.
Thanks, no? Napanood ko yung isang pelikula mo, which is very yung tungkol sa Hayan, no? Yung medyo lyrical. There's a lot of water shots. It sounded very poetic, no? But ano sa tingin mo ang role nga ng science? How should filmmakers use the facts generated by experts nga like Sir Vanny and Professor Neen, no? How should they be part of the world of non-fiction cinema?
Ang hirap. Bilang yung, how do you call this? Yung process ko, mainly, sa personal films ko are yes, in fact, poetic, lyrical, verging on oral tradition, borrowing from oral tradition. Hindi kailangang black and white. Also, as powerful a medium as film is, hindi kailangang isahog mo lahat, 'di ba? So, for example, for Balud, yung pelikula ko tungkol sa Yolanda, it served as number one, as a way of grieving for the community na merong expression para mailabas yung hinanakit ng mga tao, dahil iba siya sa namatayan ka lang ng kamag-anak, which is very personal. Yung nangyari sa amin, thousands of people died. Yung nawala sa iyo yung lugar mo, yung sense of belongingness mo, yung pagiging isa, yun yung nawala. So I would like to think na yung pelikula nakatulong para sa grieving. As much as naging trigger siya para magkaroon ng community action outside the film. So dito na papasok yung experts, dito na papasok yung facts. In fact, nung 2015, together with Greenpeace, yung community namin ay naging community witness sa isang inquiry sa Commission on Human Rights. We were demanding na yung climate injustices na nangyayari sa Pilipinas ay isang human rights violation at ito ay dinudulot ng kakaunti at kakarampot lamang ng mga malalaking kumpanya gaya ng Shell, gaya ng ExxonMobil. At saka syempre hindi natin maipagkakaila na yung kapangyarihan ng mga kumpanyang ito ay pinapahintulutan ng ating mga awtoridad na dapat siyang nagpoprotekta sa atin na mga tao, 'di ba? So I think yun yung isang role ng arts. As a trigger, as a way of expressing, at saka para mabigyan ng motibasyon yung tao na yun nga, kahit hindi ka eksperto when it comes to science, eksperto ka dahil sa experience mo, sa immediate experience mo ng lugar mo at ng kalikasan. Ikaw yung apektado 'di ba? Pardon my honesty, pero minsan tayo as experts and scientists, we are also looking from outside, 'di ba? Parang tayo yung nasa labas ng microscope pero yung mga tao na mga biktima, sila yung nasa loob ng petri dish. Sila yung number one na biktima. Kaya kailangan silang mapakinggan at kung hindi sila eksperto, there are other ways such as storytelling. Doon papasok yung arts.
Can I add here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yung pinag-uusapan natin is how yung mga dangers that are nangyayari sa mundo which the scientists have discovered, kung paano as artists pwede namin i-share sa mga taong bayan. No? And I'm sure a lot of words hindi naiintindihan ng mga tao, like all this climate change rin, or global warming. But if you give a face to that numbers, no? So you show a particular family. Okay, that's more maybe in the realm of fiction. Pero sa documentary rin, you choose a family that shows itong tragedy na nangyayari, like sa Yolanda. But then, paano mo nga i-connecta ito sa mga scientists? I think there are many ways that pwede nating i-ugnay yung the hard facts and yung actually nangyayari on the ground. I think this is where to connect it also with the kalaman ng mga katutubo, no, ng pinag-usapan. I played around with this word, yung indigenous, no. My best friend is an Ifugao. My mentor is an Ifugao elder, and he always mispronounced the word indigenous. He always talks about we indigenous people have been taken for granted, or they are always attacking our indigenous culture. I think this mispronunciation, a cosmic mispronunciation, brings in this. There's the he incorporated in one word the genius of the indigenous cultures. Yung kaalaman nila, yung kanilang harmony with nature, their knowledge of how watersheds would keep the rice terraces alive for 3 centuries. Itong mga kaalaman nila are something that binubura natin because we are so enthralled with Western education. No? Okay, we cannot undo. Philippines we are a hybrid. We're between that Western categorical kind of thinking sa science, but also yung mga lumad natin, I think are also PhDs in their own right. Yung kaalaman nila tungkol sa kalikasan at sa healing at sa mga paggamot. Pero we decided to follow the colonizers model. Ngayon, as artists, maybe we can make the people more aware. Teka muna, okay, we'll rely on some cardiac surgeons and some specialists in dentistry. Pero I think we have to also look na marami ring nagagawa ng ating mga mambaki, mga mababaylan, because they are dealing with the inner side of healing. Kaya when it comes also to forecasting nature, maraming may alam ang mga mambaki tungkol sa upcoming natural forces, no? Pero we have our echo chamber now is to follow it only from the imported sciences. And I think if I'm sure that Giovanni and Neem are also looking for ways to let that scientific approach also blend with whatever our forefathers had to offer. Pero ngayon, translating that as artists, I think yun ang challenge sa atin na bigyan ng yung mga kwento natin. Our storytelling has to be maybe not as exciting as Spider-Man and Wonder Woman and yung mga, pero we probably will find local stories of how the local people dealt with natural disasters and learned from them. Ang kaso ngayon, we're so stuck with those other Western images and maybe Western science that binabaliwala natin yung kaalaman ng ating katutubo. I think we can learn a lot from them.
Pwede ba akong magdag doon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back to your question kanina regarding kung ano yung mako-contribute ng ating mga katutubo. I think the more important question is how and will we let them contribute? Yeah. Diba? Kasi yung kailangan espasyo eh. For example, yung mga sinasabi ni tatay, for example, in the Ifugao, they are secluded. Mas nahirapang mapuntahan ng mga kolonyal. Kaya may preservation nung pagkakakilanlan nila sa kalikasan nila. And this is something that could be, how do you call this, attractive for storytellers and filmmakers like us. Pero yung danger that I see in that is, in the future, these beautiful films that we will make of our indigenous people would only serve as an archive, or even an archive of a past that is gone. Yung whether we like it or not, as much as we want to be independent in our own communities and islands, nasa NCR ang seat of power, and if our communities are not given space sa polisiya, sa participatory na paggawa ng polisiya, we will only end up romanticizing this, our communities, romanticize in the future what would have been erased communities. Kasi parang dun papunta eh, di ba? We need to hold the authorities accountable. We should hold their power, demand our rights. Kasi kahit yung mga katutubo natin continue ang way of life with the environment, konti na lang masasagasaan na rin sila at lahat ngayon nasasagasaan na ng kaunlaran, so-called kaunlaran. Nasasagasaan ng mga pagmimina, ng paglalaging, lahat. 'Di ba? So, I think yung isang malaking challenge sa ating lahat is holding these people accountable para magkaroon ng systemic change.
Pwede po bang...
Thanks. Gusto ko rin, gusto kong tanongin naman si Professor Tapang, no? Dahil iba rin yung perspective mo sa mga problema ng lipunan. Sa mga nakikita mo, ano dapat ang mas bigyang pansin ng mga storytellers in the realm of all of the issues that you've been tackling in recent years, no? Ano sa tingin mong so far below the radar, hindi masyadong pinapansin, but they're so urgent na dapat mabigyan ng pansin?
Marami actually na issues na talagang urgent. Kung usapin ng listahan ng urgent, everything is actually an urgent, becomes an urgent issue because we're we're trying to look at the problem at a very late moment already. Climate change, we're nearing the peak of the irreversible changes. Even the bird hunt of atom around you. Akala mo ang ganda-gandang panoorin ng mga ibon. I recently just became a birder during this pandemic. Pero sa dulo, ang ilikod doon, meron kang isang pamilya na hindi ko makakain. Kaya kailangan niyang barilin ng isang ibon na nakita niya. Unfortunately, is a Philippine eagle. Yung kahirapan, yung kagutuman na nangyayari sa gitna ng overdevelopment na kinukwento ni Tapang sa kanyang film, sa gitna ng disasters na dala-dala ng mga na dumarating sa atin, na madalas naman dumarating sa atin pero hindi natin hinahanda yung mamamayan. Lahat kasi to, I think somebody has to tell the story. I can only see what I see around my room, around my commute to work. Pero somebody has to tell me other things that are happening. And unless hahanap ka ng paraan para makita yon. Pero I think yun yung malaking value ng mga documentaries na nandito, hindi lang doon sa ecology section, kundi doon sa iba pang nakalista doon sa Daang Dokyu. Malaki ang sinasabi niya na ito ang nangyayari sa kabuuan at hindi mo pwedeng tingnan ang isang bagay na susukatin ko lang kung ano yung temperature ng mundo. Kailangan kong sabihin, ano ba ang ibig sabihin nitong 1.5 degree centigrade rise? Ano ba ang ibig sabihin nitong 410 parts per million na carbon dioxide? Ang ibig sabihin nito may namamatay. Ang ibig sabihin nito dadami ang mga Yolanda, dadami ang mga disasters, patuloy yung mga hindi kahandaan ng ating mga mamamayan at ng mga katutubo dun sa disasters. Maganda yung nangyari dun sa pinatubo na documentary na ang unang bumaba actually ay yung mga Aita mula dun sa bundok kahit hindi pa dinideclare na puputok na ang bulkan kasi alam na nila na nagbago na ang sitwasyon. Tayo dapat ganun din eh. Dapat malalaman at naaamoy din natin yung pagbabago. Pero kung hindi kasi tayo nakalapit doon sa sitwasyon kung saan nangyayari yung mga bagay, ang hirap din tingnan, lalong-lalo na everybody is forced to stay at home right now. We're viewing things over the internet and we're filtered by our internet blinders. Maganda talaga na meron pang gumagawa sa gitna ng pandemya ng pagpapakita, ito ang mundo ngayon, ito ang problema ngayon. I can always give the numbers, but the numbers doesn't mean without the story behind it. Even in science reporting, science writing, we have to tell the story of the number. You just don't say it's 1.5 degrees centigrade. You have to tell why, how did you get it, what's the impact. Because for that number to be meaningful, dapat alam ng nagbabasa kung ano yung implikasyon nito sa kanya.
Okay, thanks. At si Neen naman, dun sa yung mga inaaral mo no sa anthropology, in particular sa indigenous cultures and peoples, no. Meron din ba mga under the radar na mga issues na do you think are na hindi rin na binibigyan ng pansin that storytellers, journalists, filmmakers should pay more attention to?
Yung isa pong observation ko in general, no, there's this view, there's this dominant perception na yung traditional knowledge nila ay inferior because they are unscientific, no? Gaya nung sinabi kanina nila Pangs. Pero the question there is that I've been trying to answer, who charts what's scientific and what is not, no? Who are we to say na yung mga kaalaman nila tungkol sa disaster, yung mga paniniwala nila tungkol sa sakuna o sa earthquake o sa typhoon ay hindi scientific, 'di ba? So I have observed na yung traditional indigenous knowledges, it actually challenges yung dominant worldview sa science ngayon, no, as it is, as a colonial enterprise. Kasi ang nangyayari, how we view ngayon nature, it's an object. Nature is an object, and we are the masters of nature. No, we conquer or overcome nature. pag ikukumpara mo yun sa paradigm or sa way of seeing the world ng mga katutubo, they view nature as something that they coexist with along with the spirit world. Hindi siya object that you manipulate and that you can conquer. No? Tapos ang isa ko pang napansin, yung folklore, yung value ng folklore, very important, and we overlook it most of the time because we always say, ay, hindi naman yan scientific, ay, hindi naman yan mapuprove in a scientific manner. Pero what if it works? What if it has been working for the past decades? No? Who are we to say na hindi siya scientific? Right? And usually naman, itong mga beliefs na to that have persisted and that have been very useful to indigenous communities, may scientific explanation din yan. So, yun po, yun yung isa sa mga very important na punto na natutunan ko.
Yeah. Well, thank you. No? Yung napaka-interesting yung insight na yan. Especially dahil naalala ko yung unang pelikula naman ni Kidlat Tahimik, no, yung Mabangong Bangungot, where I mean Kidlat's career has actually been kind of a series of questioning kind of colonial dominance of our thinking and the value of the indigenous nga yung sinasabi niya. It's kind of ironic kasi yung biography ni Kidlat, as some of you may not know, no, naging chair pa yan ng student council ng UP. So I have a friend na parang kababata ni Kidlat. Sabi niya, people were talking about Kidlat as being a future president of the Philippines, no? Na nag-Wharton yan, tumira yan sa Germany, na Center of Science, but nag-iba yung trajectory ng kanyang career. I mean, how did you see the light, Kidlat, no? Kasi you were raised in this, ito nga sinasabi nga ni Neen, where there's this Western point of view where science lords it over everything and wala masyadong value yung native beliefs and folklore and its spirit world, etc. No, but you have tried to bring all of that back into Filipino consciousness. No, so how were you enlightened?
Well, okay, lumaki ako sa Baguio. Baguio was an American concoction. Ginawa itong sanitarium and the rest and recreation place for their military and for their colonial governors. Pero it happens that this cosmopolitan culture of the Americans, dito sa gitna ng teritoryo ng katutubo, at yung constant denial ng genius, ng indigenous, was something that ito rin yung echo chamber na pinick up ko. Oy, kailangan, you have to get your degree, kailangan mag-aral ka and read those books by John and Jane, look and see. Well, nung tumagal, napansin ko na, teka muna, bakit ko parang blinding myself na walang kwenta yung kaalaman nila. I think the height of it came na after getting my MBA na economic researchers ako. I was like supporting the Green Revolution. The main thing was siguro as a researcher, sige, like the agronomists of America have said, let us put tons of fertilizer, let us buy tons of pesticide, let us GMO our miracle rice. And in the end, after several decades, parang hindi nila ma-outdo yung food security ng mga Ifugao, no? The Ifugaos just did it over centuries. Hindi spectacular yung kanilang yields, or again, ito nga yung kaninang pinag-usapan ni Nim, yung methodology nila. We always have to say, okay, nabibilang ko yung harvest ay 60 kavans compared sa kayong mga primitivo, 30 kavans lang ang yield niyo. But 30 kavans, bastante na yan. That's good enough for us to live, and we live for 3,000 years. And bakit tayo basta just for the again, yung Western thinking na kailangan malaki yung tubo. Wala na yung katutubo, pero yung malaki yung tubo and get 60 kavans or 70 kavans. Pero yung lasa is not right. Pero it's also creating cancer and everything, like a lot of GMOs. So I think, yeah, I turned to filmmaking by accident. Pero it was more because sabi ko, bakit ba naniniwala ako lahat dito sa mga echo chamber ng mga MBA? And they're the cause of the they're the cause of the problems of the world today. Kaya maybe a few more MBAs tearing up their diplomas and becoming artists might have a little more impact on the world. Maybe Bill Gates can still see the light one day, I hope. Pero sa atin,
so getting an MBA is still a viable route to doing creative filmmaking.
You know, sa MBA,
I want to
I called just yung MBA ko is not anymore Master of Business Administration. Nung pinunit ko yung diploma ko, sabi ko, ito yung mababangong bangungot ng Amerika that brainwashed me for many years before I became an artist.
yun ang yung cry of balintawak, Kidlat. Anyway, I want to go to some of the questions from our audience, no? There's a question from Joel Laksamana. It's not directed at any particular person, but maybe some of you feel more qualified to answer this. With all due respect, where does creative storytelling start and stakeholder reality end? I ask this because I have well-meaning, mulat, sincere government sector advocates who also want to solve our searing socio-political issues. Okay, with all due respect, where does creative storytelling start and stakeholder reality end? Now, I'm trying to wrap my mind around that. No, does anyone want to take a crack at that? I don't understand where stakeholder reality. Anong ibig sabihin yun? I guess maybe I don't know. Pax, you want to take a shot at this? Kasi I guess yung community. I guess when you mean stakeholder, I guess that's people in the community as well, no? Yung reality ng stakeholder. So I guess the way I interpret it is how much space can you have in presenting the reality of local people, of communities, no? I guess also this also pertains to Kidlat's films, where he's fictionalized these issues. No, he raises important questions that have to do with the real world. Pero syempre, na-fictionalize niya yung buhay ni Enrique, and he's invented characters. I guess it also boils down to a basic question: are these documentaries or are these feature films? Di ba? Na yun nga dun sa usapan natin kanina about Panks's films, some of them are more poetic. They're based on local folklore rather than scientific fact or kind of very objective observation. They wouldn't be considered journalistic observations or stories, no? So I don't know, Panks or Kidlat, do you want to how creative can you get when you tell the stories of local people?
I think baka yung question is yung artist in trying to dramatize a problem he wants to share or to awaken people to, no? Kung minsan, and that's it, sometimes the people who are literally trying to connect, sabi mo, hindi naman ganyan yung reality, or it doesn't look like that face that I know of somebody who is suffering from that issue. Artists choose metaphors, no? We use broader poetic devices para pakita yung problema. What Giovanni has to present are very important statistics, but we need some poetic images to make his statistics awaken up our greedy economists who probably have not understood how they have contributed dito sa global warming or climate change. So if I choose a family living in a barrio and let their suffering, yan ang magiging lalawak yan sa sitwasyon ng mga macroeconomic figures. I think it does not matter anymore if kamukang-kamuka ito ng mga sitwasyon sa nangyari on the ground. I think it's similar to this whole debate on Enrique de Malacca, who could have been the first circumnavigator of the globe. Maraming circumstantial evidence that says baka nga siya because he could speak the language. Pero the hard and tried historian will look at it and says, wala kang opposite, wala kang loxit. You know what opposites and loxits are? Wala kang opposite or locus. Yung mga footnotes natin. And because you don't have that, you cannot make a case. I think we have to start challenging those methodologies where that's the only way to do that. And I think the first step is where artists can say, teka muna, who said that the world is flat? Maybe we have some other ways to prove or at least get the thinking started on it. So sa akin, I don't think we have to worry about that literal one-on-one ng character ko sa film ko and somebody who actually, or a stakeholder who has that. We should, importante yung intention natin. Ang intention natin as artists is to let the communities, let our people wake up, get angry or get agitated about something that's wrong. And yung mga poetic devices natin are just a tool for that. No? Maybe Francis has something to add on that.
Yeah, I also want to add na as a species, as human beings, I think all of us are artists because, you know, we come into the world, our first interaction with the world is emotional. You know, yung sanggol kapag gutom umiiyak, pag nakikita niya yung nanay, yung tatay niya, natutuwa siya. So I think malaki yung role ng creative storytelling and it need not be limited to any device or to any methodology, whether poetic or journalistic or investigative. Lahat to kailangan. But the point is, with creative storytelling, like how I do poetry with my films, is yung personal philosophy and opinion ko sa storytelling and change, madaling matuhog eh. Natutuhog mo yung reality, yung facts, at saka yung need ng tao to see what's in front of them na veiled. Alam mo yon, or to find an avenue na pwedeng ilabas yung hinaing in this way. You know, hinaing good or bad, you know, in any emotion is what I mean. And important with important with creative storytelling and stakeholders is, for me, it's not prescriptive, pero ito yung philosophy ko na storytellers and storytelling must come from inside, from the community, from the locals. Kasi nga yung lingwahe nila yung magdidikta din kung paano lalabas yung storytelling as a process. Kasi, for example, yung lingwahe sa amin is more folklore, more oral tradition. So when in fact, after Yolanda, nung nag-research ako, people were talking about, which is nasa himurasak ko naman na pelikula, people were talking about the apparitions, the dreams, the signs from the mountains and the birds and the sea that helped them survive the typhoon. Kasi yung number one na problema doon, again, going back to Western language, lahat ng media outlets, ABS, GMA, they were all using the term storm surge. Never in the history of disasters in the Philippines ginamit yung storm surge. Or at least sa Tacloban, never namin narinig yung storm surge. But everyone was trying to be scientifically correct in their reporting. Kung ginamit nila tsunami, mas may idea na yung mga tao sa amin kung ano yung tsunami at lilikas lahat. Pero storm surge, no idea. We take typhoons, more than 20 typhoons a year, so we thought it was just another typhoon. We can stay in our homes and barricade. That's it. So I think yung science, yung scientific terms na to ng storm surge, for example, is also one of the factors kung bakit maraming namatay. So yeah, that's my answer to creative storytelling and stakeholders. Yeah.
Sa akin, dagdag ko lang, siguro importante na makita na hindi lang talaga siya usapin ng kung ano yung documentary na pinapalabas. May konteksto talaga kasi siya na iniiralan at mahirap. I think I get the point of view of the one who asked the question. Paano kung siya na maybe tiga DNR, paano siya makakatulong kung ang pinag-uusapan doon sa ay policies ng gobyerno? We have to realize that it's a historical situation where we are in. Even yung sinasabi ni Max ngayon na on the storm surge, kahit naman natin, I think sinabi na tsunami yan, kung hindi pa rin hinanda yung local na mamamayan, yung scale ganun pa rin eh. In fact, we really had to study later kung paano na nakaabot at paano na mauulit ito. And important that we learn from what has been shown. I think that's the best way for a good meaning civil servant to play and help in changing things, is to learn from what is there, what has been told by the stories, and so that we can actually look at our own areas, ano ba yung pwede natin idagdag, and to realize na may mga tanong na mas matanda pa sa atin. May mga tanong kagaya ng diniscuss ni Enrique doon sa storya. May may globalization, may colonialization, may economics, tinuruan pa tayo ng economics ng film na yan. Merong kontekstong gano'n na dapat maintindihan din natin, or else talagang napakaliit na pwede lang natin magawa for us to be able to go beyond. I go beyond my science in order to reach the people who would matter. We have to understand what the situation ng local community so that we can go beyond yung nakikita natin, go beyond our blinders so that we can be more effective in trying to change the situation. And documentaries in themselves, we have to put in, they only really serve to ask the question and make us more interested in the topic. Kasi, I mean, how long can a documentary can go? I mean, we have to tell the whole story of the Filipino people. Talagang hindi mo mabubuo sa isang maigsi lamang.
Can I add to that? So dun sa nagtanong who's a civil servant, I think number one is to recognize the power and responsibility no matter what position you hold. Diba? Kasi sa context din ng isang civil servant, for sure, maraming systemic oppressions na kailangan sirain, buwagin. And these stories can serve as starting points for them. Kasi iba-iba naman yung role natin sa society, di ba? We are all trying to be experts at something, but we just really want change. So kung ano man yung mga mapanood nila, for example, they can spring from that to look at policies. Ano ba yung nakaka-apekto? Di ba? For example, yung sa the war we were not taught about, which is about Japanese imperialism. Until now, it's happening. Sa Tacloban, after Yolanda, yung JICA pumasok and they're proposing, working with the government, to put a tide embankment. Hindi tide embankment yung kailangan ng mga tao. We have scientists, academics, organizations who are fighting for mangroves. Pero wala sila. Hindi nila pinapakinggan to. They go for tide embankment. And then this history of Japanese imperialism is happening again. So I think yun yung pwedeng gawin ng isang civil servant. And in the context of film and documentary, the bigger picture is, I think it's strong. It's strong. Storytelling is strong as a weapon. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng censorships. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng red tagging of artists. At the very least, kung magkaroon ng avenue for everyone to watch more of these films, of these documentaries, na di ba ngayon nilalaban natin magkaroon ng espasyo online and it is very limited. What we want is hopefully for this to be free, you know, for everyone to see this. Kasi hindi kaya ng isang film festival lang, hindi kaya ng isang buwan lang. Kailangan patuloy ang diskusyon. So maraming pwedeng gawin ng isang civil servant.
Okay, thanks. Another question, no? This is for Neen and Giovanni. Laging sinasabi na resilient daw ang Pilipino, no? Sometimes it's used as a cover for yun nga, policy failure, etc. No? So ang tanong niya, could you please help us define Filipino resiliency and its pitfalls and promise in relation to the natural and man-made calamities represented in the works in this section. So, ano yung view daw ninyo about Filipino resilience? Are we as resilient as people say? Diba? Kahit anong mangyari daw, lagi tayo nakangiti, we're a very happy people, etc. There are certain stereotypes about being Filipino that you hear from foreign friends, etc. No? What to you is Filipino resiliency, and ano bang role nito when dealing with disasters?
Siguro sa akin, yung research ko halimbawa sa isang disaster, flood-prone, peri-urban community in Montalban, no, ay makakapagsabi na yung resilience is historically a trope or an explanation or a concept deployed by the state. No, hindi naman sinasabi yan ng mga tao sa komunidad. Kadalasan, mga media outfits ang nagsasabi na resilient ang mga Pilipino. But when you go to the communities, sasabihin mo sa kanila yung term na yan. Kunyari, may isang nanay, sinabi ko, Nay, totoo ba na resilient kayo? That was actually in my guide questions. No? So tingin niyo po ba resilient kayo? Kasi sabihin nila, ano yun? Ano yung resilience? Tapos i-explain mo. Kasi po, pag sakuna, walang naman dun sa komunidad nyo eh. Kasi pag sakuna, ang galing-galing yung mag-evacuate eh. Tapos, yung konsepto na yun sa kanila, walang pangalan, walang term. Dahil that's part and interwoven with their daily lives. Their concepts of disasters are not abnormal events that disrupt daily life. It's part of life in the Philippines. So, yun yung sa akin. Baka si Sir Gani may iba.
Actually, yun nga, I was saying earlier, top 5 disasters natin, flooding, typhoon, rains, tornadoes, and volcano. Lahat yun pinag-usapan na sa mga documentaries. Pero every year, every volcanic eruption, parang bago to lagi. And that just tells us that we're not really resilient in that sense, that we're not readying our people with regard to these hazards. Vulnerability is what we actually our people are in very vulnerable tayo sa disaster, not because laging may ulan, not because laging may bagyo. Vulnerable tayo kasi mahirap yung mga tao eh. Yung daang taon na kinuwento ng circumnavigator natin, nandito pa rin eh. Problema pa rin yung gano'n na kahirapan, hindi pa rin siya nagbabago. Yung mga nakikita natin ng mga kinuwento ng films noong 1920s at hanggang ngayon, hindi naman nabago yung ilalim ng sitwasyon eh. Kaya palaging dumarating itong mga bagyo, dumarating itong mga volcanic eruptions, hindi pa rin handa yung mga tao. Kaya yung daily lives natin, naka-intertwine na talaga yung usapin ng disaster at paghahanda. So, I think that's where, quote-unquote, the parang resilience or hindi na tanggap na natin yung mga ano. Pero hindi rin naman tanggap kasi lumalaban rin yung mga mamamayan. Lumalaban rin yung mga communities at nakikita natin kagaya ng film dun sa Lumad, meron talagang pabalik na laban na tira ang estado. So mahirap sabihin na kahit nadadala natin to sa ngiti. Kasi may namamatay, may naghihirap, may nawawalan ng mga pamilya, at hindi mo naman pwedeng ngitian yun. Siguro, ang kailangan talaga nating tingnan ay paano ba natin mai-ingrain, hindi lang yung resilience na sinasabi ni Neen kanina, kundi yung paano natin maipapasok sa buong lipunan na hindi na tayo matatakot na uulan, hindi tayo matatakot na babagyo, hindi tayo matatakot na mag-earthquake, etc. Well, kailangan talaga natin paghandaan ito at there are several things that we can do. We can prepare for it. Kung may earthquake drills, dapat may typhoon drills, dapat may volcanic drills, etc. Pero wala tayong typhoon drills. Kung merong kung ang usapin ng vulnerability natin ay kakulangan ng kabuhayan, kailangan natin mag-provide ng kabuhayan, kailangan natin i-improve yung economic situation natin, or else ang kwento ng environment sa atin ay kwento ng disaster, kwento ng ano yung nawala, kwento ng ano yung hindi na natin makita. And that's a very sad state kung yun na lang i-document ng ating mga filmmakers at the end.
Can I add to this, no? I think habang nag-uusap kayo, I na-realize ko rin na okay, resiliency and yung pinag-usapan ni Giovanni, mga preparedness, no? Siguro ang iniisip ko yung inner resiliency. There's an outer resiliency, and you can have drills and you can have all kinds of, like the Japanese are so, ang galing nila pa sa earthquake drills, sanay na mula nung grade 1 sila, meron sila. But that is for the people who are really in the urban setting, because there are large numbers na kailangan ma-evacuate, ma-move out. And so for them, resiliency is maybe lowering the body count, di ba? Yan usually ang palaging casualty count. Pero I think from a cultural point of view, kung sasakan ko rin yung sinasabi ni Nim na yung inner resiliency ng Filipino, I think it's a certain, siguro we live in this typhoon and earthquake and ring of fire. Nasanay na tayo over centuries and centuries na there is no certainty sa kalikasan. Let us just learn to live with when surprises it comes. Pero if inwardly, and I think yung kapwa culture natin is one of the very strong factors why we are a very resilient people, no? I think you're all familiar with the kapwa psychology, Psikolohiyang Filipino, that Dr. Virgilio Enriquez started about 40 years ago. It was his reaction. He had studied in America, and sabi niya, why are we analyzing Filipinos through Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Skinner and his rats? Anong kaugnayan sa atin? So he said, maghanap tayo ng bagong methodology based on Filipino core values. And they found kapwa, pakikipagkapwa is that central value. I don't want to go too much in that, pero I think yung inner flexibility ng mga Filipino, which is evidenced by kapwa, which makes us kind of very different from other cultural paradigms, especially yung industrial paradigm, which is the one that can do mobilization of evacuation and building evacuation centers. Pero yung kwento ni Niman, bumaba yung mga katutubo. I think there was no conscious, organized, mag-evacuate tayo. Nararamdaman lang nila si Apple Milyari, and sabi nila, teka, I think, nababasa na nila yung gusto niya sabihin, and they went down from the mountain. So these are things that can come back into our stories because nasa atin na yun. It's really part of our old inner dynamics, which we are losing because we are subscribing lang na kailangan we have 200 rescue cars and 500 rescue boats, and then we will always fare very badly compared to yung mga Japanese rescue teams. That's why we keep importing these rescue teams, which is probably even necessary pag may, like nung earthquake sa Baguio noong 1990. So ang gusto ko lang dito yung, okay, outer resilience is probably important because we're urbanized now, we have big urban centers. Pero ang pinaka basic pa rin natin, and I think kung naniniwala tayo doon, pwede natin balikan yung ating pakikipagkapwa as a source of resiliency.
Pwede ba ako Yeah. Sa resilience naman, honestly, I feel that resilience is a mask. It's a mask that our governments are hiding behind para hindi ibigay yung basic human rights ng mga biktima ng climate disasters. It is but a happy washing. Alam mo yun, na ay happy naman yung mga Pinoy, okay lang yan. Okay na tayo. 'Di ba? They're telling us to hide behind our positive attitude. Oo, masayahin tayong kultura, but we have human rights. Hindi ibig sabihin na happy ka, hindi na ibibigay sa'yo yung rights mo. And to add to Sir Vanny's point about resilience and holding drills, earthquake drills, typhoon drills, these are important, I agree. But also, I think kaya ng Pilipinas, if we hold people in power accountable, kaya natin to be more than reactive. I think drills are only a reaction to this. Parang tinanggap mo na na okay lang mangyari sa atin to. When in fact, yung climate disasters and climate changes and destruction of the environment na nangyayari sa Pilipinas are hastened with this history of violence, history of colonialism, history of vulnerability. We have become vulnerable because of this history na patuloy pa rin nangyayari. So if our government will be able to push for these companies who are destroying our environment to transition to a renewable source of energy, to transition to something na environment friendly and just to humans, just to the Filipino people, we will be able to transcend and go beyond and say goodbye to just being resilient. Alam mo yun? Yun lang naman. Galit na ako, so stop na.
No, it's good. That's an important message. But we're running out of time. But before we go, maybe a few words of advice to the many, especially young people. We have a young audience, students, young teachers, people who are interested in both ecology and science and documentary making and storytelling. Anong maaari nating ibahagi sa kanila? Maybe we can start with I don't know, maybe Neen. Since you've been immersed in communities, what kind of stories can young people be interested in moving forward?
Time and again, lagi naman sinasabi sa atin even before the pandemic na environmental frontliners natin ang mga katutubo. And right now, at the moment, they are under attack. So now is the time actually to stay informed and get organized, and try to, siguro pag safe na, try to immerse in IP communities because there's so much to learn from their struggles. And I hope yung mga estudyante na nanonood ay they take it upon themselves to learn more. There are lots of webinars available online. And also, they can really watch yung Daang Dokyu films like Sabangan is very important o Pagpapakalma sa Unos. And I hope they get helpful insights. They gain helpful insights from those films.
Thank you. Sige, si Professor Giovanni, what can we advise students?
Although sa akin daunting ang art. So I think sa iba daunting din ang science. But we really have to learn both. I mean, I'm a consumer of all of these documentaries. I don't really have the talent to make, but I can tell a story. And I think for the young students there inclined to do their science, kailangan lang talaga nating isipin na para kanino yung ginagawa natin na pag-aaral. Kasi the interest on nature can only go so much as your measuring tool. And at the end of the day, the reason why you're studying it, even if the obscurest atom or part of the atom that you're talking about, it will have some impact, maybe not today, in the future. And for the students of science, we really have to learn na nasa loob tayo ng isang lipunan na may kahirapan, nasa loob tayo ng lipunan na may disasters, maganda na i-ground natin lagi yung sarili natin. And the documentaries that are being shown right now in Daang Dokyu and the other documentaries that have been done will tell us na marami pa tayo dapat maintindihan dun sa konteksto kung ano yung inaaral natin ngayon. At the local level, makikita ng mga communities natin yung destruction. Pero overall, as a Filipino, lagi tatanungin natin, sana ba napunta yung aming in-export na mga ginto? Ano na nangyari sa mga daming pagmimina dito? Meron na ba kami pwedeng paggamitan ng mga bagong mga gamit? Dahil ang dami na nating nilabas. Apparently, well, not apparently, the reality is wala. Lahat ng inilabas natin, hindi natin magamit, bibilin pa ulit natin. And that's the story of underdevelopment. And that's why the problem of the role of scientists in such a situation, na ilalabas mo yung bato, babalik sa'yo ay bakal, ano pang gagawin ng isang engineer? Ano pang gagawin ng isang scientist? Tapos ng lahat. And that's probably where very few in the Philippines, and most, if not, would just join the rest going out. And I think that's a challenge for everybody to realize na ganun ang nangyayari dito sa Pilipinas, at yun yung gusto natin baguhin.
Thank you. Important message. See, Panks, lalo na ikaw, no? You're based in a particular community, no? Maraming estudyante ngayon nasa mga sentro, no? Should they be going back to their communities? Anong ma-advise mo sa kanila?
Yes, kung napanood niyo yung buong lineup, or if you have a chance until October 8, panoorin niyo. Nung napanood ko yung buong lineup, what yung pinaka spotlight for me, or yung nakuha ko sa buong lineup, is yung history of displacement. You know, from early 1900s, even earlier than that, until now, we as a people are still displaced. Displaced in the sense that our identities are displaced. Yung pagtubo natin ngayon, yung pagpalaki natin sa mga kabataan is in a Western model. And physically and internally, yung fellow Filipinos natin are also displaced. They're internally displaced because of all this greed, because of environmental destruction. Children, kung mapanood niyo yung Bullet Laced Dreams, children as young as, senior high are displaced from their homes and their schools to the streets para ipaglaban yung karapatid nila na mag-aral. Kailangan nating bumalik sa bayan, to borrow from Kidlat's film, kailangan natin magbalik bayan, not only to go back to our roots, but also to give back. Alam mo yon, and this is through our expertise, whatever you do, whether you're a storyteller, an artist, a scientist, magbalik tayo sa community. Andun yung laban. Andun yung kaya natin as a group na mag-create ng pagbabago. And with this history of displacement and our ongoing history of fighting, we should also fight and demand that the people in power who have misplaced notions of their power, who have forgotten their responsibilities to us as a people, we should put them back in their places. And sana itong history of displacement ay magkaroon na tayo ng alignment. Whether in our lifetime or not, we should just, keep on.
Yeah, well, you too, keep on, Panks. No, many thanks for what you do, and for that message as well. Kidlat Tahimik.
Gusto kong isakyan yung displacement of identity, no? I mean, colonization is really a major cost. Nawawalan tayo sa solid turf kung saan tayo nakatapak, kaya hanggang ngayon madali tayong paglaruan ng ng mga forces of economics and geopolitical. Pero yung identity, yun sa tungkol yung kung saan tayo nakatapag sa kultura natin bilang isang sambahan ng bayan. No? I think this is where at least yung mga kabataan ngayon will have to pipiliin na nila kung ano yung mga kwentong gusto nila marinig. At okay, na-democratize na ngayon ang filmmaking. From the time when I was using my 16mm hand crank, ang bibigat na camera. And now, with your cell phone, you can tell stories. Ngayon, sana we're all storytellers. You don't have to have a mass comm degree. You don't have to go to Bigfoot Hollywood style school in Cebu. I know that sa mga senior high school ngayon, there are already a lot of activities na gumagawa ng pelikula. And I saw some interesting films about yung Sanoli of Philly. I think it is done by high school students. So I've been inspired, and maybe I'll just share this too. I've been inspired to sponsor a local contest, especially among senior high school students, na humanap ng ating sariling bayani. Masyado nang nalunod ang mga kabataan sa Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, Captain America, and hindi na natin narinig ang mga kwento nila Mabini o ni Gabriela o si Papa Issue sa Iloilo o si Makling Dulag. It's not just to be chauvinistic and say we are looking for our own heroes. Pero kung wala tayong models na talagang kapareho natin, kausap natin, kayong manggi, kapareho natin, hindi yung matangos na ilong na wow, tantaran, tatatatan, tapos may laser beams na siya at mga ganun. And our young people are looking, they're brainwashed with those kind of heroes at hindi sila step forward na kaya ko rin. So itong contest na I'm trying to is in connection with next year, 1521. Okay? You all know? 2021. And you all know the song? It was in 1521. Okay. Kaya yung 35-year film na ginawa ko yung Balikbayan is about a local hero who we hardly know about. Pero sana lahat ng mga young people sa senior high schools, if you can make a little story about a local hero in your own little area, okay? Ang pangalan itong contest is USB, Ansang Sariling Bayani, okay? Mga ansang na sariling bayani. Hanapin niyo. This will be in conjunction with FDCP and eventually with DepEd, hopefully. Pero beyond that, it's just really look for your own local heroes. Don't get over-addicted with the marvelous marvels. Marami tayong sariling kwento na pwede nating i-share sa ating komunidad. Hanapin lang natin and let's not get lazy just because Netflix and all the other platforms are giving us an overdose. Ayan, I think that's the big drug war that the president should pursue. Yung overdose ng ating mga foreign heroes coming into our kabataan. I think, yan, sana gumawa kayo ng sariling dokyu at kayang-kaya niyan. And don't expect big profits because you're talking about your barangay captain who maybe had a fighting spirit. Yan ang mga hinahanap natin at hinihintay ng mga bayan natin. And I think that's why 100 years of dokyu, let's look to your inputs, kayo mga kabataan sa future.
Yeah.
And use your bamboo camera. The bamboo camera is my symbol of telling the local story, okay? Dahil sa bamboo camera, yung POV natin as a
At saka
Filipino.
gagawin mo natang award, no? Yung bamboo camera.
I give bamboo camera awards every 2 years to either filmmakers who are telling a local story who avoid the Hollywood formula. Pero kayo, mga kabataan, use your bamboo camera vision. Yung sariling kwento natin, galing sa ating sariling kultura. And maski na hindi ka gagawa ng $1 million sa patok sa takilya, yung PST films, patok sa takilya, basta use your bamboo camera and you'll see. In 2 years, marami tayong kwento na talagang pagyayabang natin. Sugod, mga kapatid!
Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, si Cara Magsanok, no, who's kind of the overall impresario of this festival, asked me if we can extend a little bit since there is a question from a filmmaker, no, who's following this discussion, si Ajani Arumpak. So with your indulgence, I know we've gone over time and it's kind of late at night, pero we'll try to make the answer here short, no. Ang sabi ni Ajani Arumpak, in your films as well as in Summer Bastian's short Dokyu, may paghahanap ng sarili, paghahanap ng identity bilang isang Pilipino. Howie is going back to a homeland where he did not grow up in. Summer is seeking for a vanishing culture she barely grew up with. There is this sensitivity that informs a strong sense of identity. Ano po para sa inyo ang konsepto ng nasyon ng pagiging Pilipino after your respective journeys? Okay, well, Summer is not here. I know Kidlat has also been exploring his identity, but Cara said, please also talk about your own experience. Okay, so I've been mostly moderating. I'll just spend a couple of minutes now because I have a film in this panel, yung Pagbabalik sa Tribo, which is about the search for identity of my main character, si Araya Solito, and myself. There's a kind of a parallel journey. But just a little bit of background. I grew up in the United States, and then I came back after I came back to the Philippines after college and decided to live here, etc. And so my career as a journalist and as a documentary maker has basically been also a journey of kind of self-discovery and wanting to find out what I am. I grew up in a community in the United States which was almost all white, and I also encountered racism in the United States. So I came back where everyone is my color, but at the same time people were making fun of me. I didn't know how to speak Tagalog, etc. So I was kind of in this this gray area in terms of being a Filipino, no? Parang in the States, I didn't feel American. In the Philippines, people were saying that you're not a real Filipino, you can't speak fluent Filipino. Well, that was a long time ago, no. Of course, now I can speak fluent Filipino, but basically, I just want to say, kasi tinatanong sa akin, ano ba yung concept ko ng nasyon, no? Well, to me, it's nationhood is a journey, and I think that's what we've all been discussing, how to make this nation a better place. And I'm just, to me, trying to become more familiar with my own nation, my own culture has also been kind of a process of trying to improve myself. And that's what I felt. I've been trying to improve myself, and I think I've improved myself. And everywhere I've gone, I've gone to so many provinces already, from Batanes all the way to Tawi-Tawi. I've explored as part of my work. Not only am I documenting, but I'm also trying to pick up the best of what I see. I see a lot of bad things also, no? Alam naman natin ang problema ng ating bansa, maging ang ating kultura, may mga problema din. But I try to pick up and study and try to absorb what I think is good and try to make it, if not part of my own practice, at least part of my own consciousness and identity. And my current advocacy is trying to teach young people baybayin, because to me it's at the root of our identity as a people, and basically it's that. It's my concept of nation is it's a very diverse set of elements, both good and bad. And I think it's part of the role of both scientists and storytellers to identify, synthesize the best that we have to offer, and to help us make us a better people. No, but anyway, I just as a way of wrapping up, aside from what I just said, I just want to say, I want to thank all of you for this fascinating and unique discussion. This is a rare interaction, no? Kasi, when we were having an initial meeting about this session, to be honest, I had misgivings because parang ang layo ng science tsaka documentary, but now I see the point. I see why the organizers brought us together, no? Because this is a kind of a unique kind of a synergy and interaction of different points of view. But I think what we all have in common, and I think where we can all help each other, is we're all interested in the truth. We're all interested in the truth in our own ways. In our storytelling, we want to present the truth. In being a natural scientist, you want to present the truth. In being a social scientist, anthropology, of course, you're working hard to find out the truth and present the truth. Kami rin as documentarists and journalists, we also. But the fact is, the truth now in attack, and it's being devalued. What's being valued more than the truth is loyalty. Loyalty to a particular person, loyalty to a particular party or ideology, never mind the truth. No? So I think it's part of our role to get together, collaborate, help each other, put the truth back on its pedestal. And that's why I appreciate yung points of view na mga scientista, no? Because their whole life is devoted to finding out the truth. Kami mga storytellers, filmmakers, documentaries, a big part of our lives are spent, of course, trying to find out the truth. But we're also trying to be creative, no? Which kind of, we have license to kind of, poetic license or a license to be more creative with the truth. No? So interacting with scientists, I think, can help us, can help bring us back down to earth and remind us that, more important than so many other things that we're concerned about is the truth. So I want to thank all of you and everyone who's been listening and has been with us for the past hour and a half or more. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. I was asked to mention some of the people who have been with us all this time. Again, the students from University of San Carlos, Cebu, UST students, especially the student members of the Journalism Guild of UST, Ateneo de Manila Universities, of course, our co-presenters for tonight, JCI, Culyon Foundation, Greenpeace Philippines, PH Can. Maraming salamat, especially to our guests, our valued guests, Kidlat Tahimik, Dr. Giovanni Tapang, Neen Sapalo, Panks, Solajes. Maraming salamat sa inyo. A recording of this conversation will be available online. Maybe your organizers can flash the handles now. Huwag niyo pong palalagpasin ang pagkakataong ito na mapanood ng libre, free, ang ilan pa sa mga natatanging obra ng ating mga dokumentarista. Nagsimula po ang unang linggo ng Daang Dokyu noong October 2 at magtatapos sa November 5. So we have about a month left. This is kind of a unique event in the annals of cinema in the Philippines. So sulitin ang pagkakataong ito at panoorin sila sa daangdocu.com/watchnow. So and then from October 2 till October 8, we will also premiere 2 documentaries, Glimpses of the Culyon Leper Colony and of Culyon Life, a 1929 film that was excavated from the British Film Institute archives, and also a new film, Bullet-Laced Dreams, released in 2020, which follows the struggles of Lumad children. So thank you all for joining Reality Check. Ang lahat ng bagay ay magkaugnay. Ang dokumentaryo ay paglalahad ng mga storyang halos totoo, pero sa huli po, tayo rin at walang iba ang magsusulat ng ating mga kwento. So I'm signing off, Howie Severino, for Daang Dokyu. Many thanks.